Hello, my name is Audra Proctor and I lead the Learning Services team here at Changefirst. I just wanted to take a few minutes to say a little bit more about PCI and to use a very simple example to explain how PCI works. We developed PCI specifically to focus on the people aspects of change, and we did that because of our research. Our research told us then, and it continues to tell us now, that it's not enough just to have a good strategy or a plan to install your new process or your new system, but you really need people behind you. You need them committed to making changes to the way they behave, and you need them accepting your change and ready to use it in the way that you intended. And so PCI really focuses on people. So with PCI, we offer 6 critical success factors, and I'll call them CSFs from now on. There are 3 CSFs that we call organizational, and that's because they are the responsibility of the leadership team and the project board to really focus on giving people clarity, confidence in leaders, and some specific plans that will help engage their effort during major change. And if we do this work well, we start to build acceptance for the change in people. And then we have 3 CSFs that we call local CSFs. And with these, we target line managers because in their local area, they have the control and they can reinforce the change for their people. They can model the new behavior. They can provide practical supports for their people as they learn to adapt. And it's only when we're doing this work well that we're starting to implement and get people's commitment to behave in the new way. And so now what I want to do, I want to take each of the CSFs in turn and explain a little bit more. And I said I would use an example. So the example I'm going to use is of an organization I worked with a number of years ago. It was a global organization who acquired a CRM system. And they acquired this CRM system because they were missing out on revenue opportunities. Actually, they just couldn't keep track of their pipeline. And what we realized very early on in the project is that to get the real benefit from this new CRM system, we needed the sales teams all around the world and the order fulfillment back office teams also around the world to be working very differently and together. And that represented a major change for those teams. And so let me tell you what happened with PCI first. First, the team created a statement. It was a statement that was short, that was easy to share, and that the leaders would use to announce the change and to really build people's energy and excitement in the early stages of the project. And this statement comprised 3 parts. The first part we call imperative, and it was for urgency. The second part we call future state, and this was a positive picture of the future that people could see. And the third statement we call solution, and it really was designed to give people a sense of the time scale for the change and to help them see that the change would roll out in manageable chunks. And in PCI, this is critical success factor 1, and we call it a shared change purpose. The next thing they did was turn their attention to the leadership. And there were 3 bits of work here. The first part was to work with the senior managers in both the sales teams and the back office teams across the geographies. And the job here was to get their agreement to do certain things at different stages in the project to show their active sponsorship for the change. The second bit of work they did was to work with project managers and change agents and HR practitioners across the geographies. And this was to develop and train people as change agents who would build specific plans to roll out the change in their local areas. And then finally, what they did was identify people they considered to be informal influencers. They may not have organizational power in that part of the business, but they certainly had political power. And they enlisted their support to do specific things for this change. This body of work we call CSF2, Effective Change Leadership. Then the team turned their attention to this whole topic of engagement. They wanted to create and agree with the leadership 4 key plans to engage people's effort during major change. And so the first plan they built was an involvement plan. If they can clearly describe how people would take part in the change, then it would give people a greater sense of control over what was happening to them during major change. And so for the different geographies, they built involvement plans. Then they went on to think about how they might help and encourage people to learn new skills associated with the CRM system, and so they built quite detailed training development plans. They then went on to think about how do we reward people for their extra effort during major change, and so they agreed with the leadership a number of different strategies for rewarding people as the change unfolds. And then finally they built quite detailed plans about how they would keep people informed and keep communication ongoing, so they had some substantial communication plans for the different geographies. This body of work we call CSF3, Powerful Engagement Processes. So far we've been talking about the 3 CSFs that we call organizational. And with this project there came a point in time when, with all these plans in place and these support packages, there was still not enough traction for the change. And in fact, we were finding that among some of the sales teams in the geographies, there was some resistance. They saw the CRM system as overly bureaucratic and actually taking them away from the customer. And this was pointing to something quite interesting. It was a missing piece of work for us with the middle and frontline managers in those local geographies who had the power to reinforce the change and to model the change for their teams. And this piece of work is what we call CSF4, the first local critical success factor. It's about building committed local sponsorship. And for this project, this turned out to be the tipping point. With these line managers operating as committed local sponsors, they would really help their teams engage with the change personally. They would help them understand the personal imperative, the consequences of not engaging with change at this point in time. They would help them see the solution as viable by providing opportunities for them to try it and test it and provide feedback to the project teams. And also they would, through one-to-one communication, help individuals understand what it takes to really be successful in the new world. And this body of work we call CSF5. It's the second local CSF, and it's called Strong Personal Connection. So as we come to the final CSF, let me tell you of one other thing that line managers were doing quite well. They were responding more appropriately to people's personal concerns. Because they were working quite actively with the project teams, using tools to help them diagnose resistant behavior and to understand the causes for people's resistance. And so they felt less exposed in their one-to-one conversations with individuals in their teams. We call this body of work Critical Success Factor 6, Sustained Personal Performance. And ultimately, it's really about supporting people as they continue to learn to adapt and use the new ways of working.